and some people might not like hearing this, but you got to make a decision regardless of whether you think you're ready or not. And I got a great quote: you jump out of the airplane and build a parachute on the way down. The highest return investment is nothing that you can buy. It's not Bitcoin, it's not crypto, it's not real estate, none of that. It's investing in yourself, for real. And that's coming from somebody that's done it over and over. The best investment you can make is in yourself.
What's going on, everybody? I am here with a very special guest who is coming to us from the Porn Reboot implementation group, and I'm very excited to pick his brain and get to know him a little better, and I'm very excited for him to share his story about his time in the group. We got Alex in the house. How you doing today, sir?
What's up, Chris? How are you, man?
I'm great, man. Thanks for hopping on the call again. First things first, since you're coming from the implementation group, could you share a little bit about your experience during your time with us?
Yeah, I think anybody who gets into a group like this, you basically make a decision that, like, I can't do this on my own. And beyond that, it was like, I think porn has become so normalized, and it's continuing to become so normalized that it's like, oh, it's not a big deal. Everybody does this. And then you realize that, hang on a second, even apart from the time that it's taking out of your life, zoning out, whatever, I didn't really truly attach how it was affecting my mentality, how it was showing up for my kids, my wife, all this stuff. It's a lot more insidious, I think, that people realize. And it's been 30 years of my life, probably, at this point. And I'm 43, almost 43. I think making the decision that, like, hey, I need some outside help, I can't do this on my own, is the first thing, after realizing that, hey, this probably isn't a good idea to keep doing it, right? And it's a lot more insidious because it's not like where it's like affecting like your teeth, your health. It's more of a slow burn, but on a long enough timeline, and I'm probably somebody that I didn't seek outside, like, pay for or anything, like. So it was even more insidious, I would say, because I wasn't like rock bottoming and like cheating on my wife and doing all this stuff. So it just came along at the right time for, it was like, I should probably address this. I've got a 5-year-old daughter. And I'm like, man, the chicks I'm watching, they're fucking daughters too. I can't let this continue and get worse. And again, back to the insidious thing, it just, for whatever reason, I don't think the stuff that I was watching, just being transparent, was any worse than the stuff I was watching 20 years ago. When I say worse, it's like escalating hedonic adaptation and all that stuff. But nonetheless, I'm like, all right, that's a cop-out, because it's not to say that it couldn't get worse down the road. So it was like, all right, that was one thing of like, for getting into the program. I like the step-by-step. There's a methodology to it. The coaches, I think, was probably the biggest thing that really sold the value for me, that you have these people that are taking their time to invest into the group. You've got psychologists, you got a neuroscientist, you've got a psychologist. That was really a big part of it. That was the big selling point for me, that there was a ton of value in that. Now, executing on that stuff on a consistent basis over a year long, it's like anything else, working out, whatever. That's the challenging thing to fit into your life. Certainly if you're running a business, like I got married, 2 kids, right? Excuses, right? But I'm coming from somebody that time is a very precious commodity. We never get that back. And I will tell you, it's been a year in the program. I will tell you, I'm not 100%. I'm miles ahead of where I was a year ago, I would say. But it's like any addiction. It's an ongoing thing, right? You don't just cure your addiction from and you're like, all right, I'm just going to do the same shit I was doing the entire time. That's where I think the program really, you're basically retooling and reshaping how you feel about yourself, first and foremost. And that's really what the end goal is, right? It takes work, and it's ongoing work, right? But the tools that it provides, I'm still journaling, I'm still putting down the wins, and consistency trumps intensity.
That's good, man. There's so much to chew on there, and I want to try to like hit all of those various points that
I know, I just verbal diarrhea on it, but
no, it's all good. It's all good.
Coffee, so I'm ready to go.
Oh man, he's fired up. Alex is fired up, and I'm ready to go. All right, so there's a lot that I want to touch upon. Again, thank you so much for touching upon all those things. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing about this type of behavior. With behavioral based addictions as opposed to substance, it's not as cut and dry. With a substance-based addiction, there's a pretty clear juxtaposition as far as, okay, sober versus not sober. You're either using the substance or you're not using the substance. It's pretty obvious. But with a behavioral-based addiction, it's not as black and white, right? So what might look like a slip for me might look different than a slip for you, right? You said that, okay, you weren't necessarily escalating to, for lack of a better term, more extreme things that you were watching. But one thing that I've heard said is that you develop a relationship with what you orgasm to. And here's this relationship that's proven to be unhealthy over time, and yet for one reason or another, we're still keeping it up. And one of the first tools that we introduce to the group is the thank you and goodbye letters. We address the fact that, yeah, like this is a thing that provided us with some semblance of joy for a little while, a bit of an outlet. But like I said, it's proven to be an unhealthy relationship, a relationship that's no longer serving us the way it once did because it no longer aligns with what we want and what we value now. Like we said, you're a husband, you're a dad, you're a businessman, you've got things going for you. That's what you want to consciously invest into. That's what makes you, that's what you want to align with, as opposed to, again, this behavior that over time has proven to be unhealthy for you. So on that tip, I think it's so important that you shared that. And one other thing before I ask another question, you said you said you're not 100%, and that is so real. Because here, like you said, it certainly takes time, but one thing we say about a zillion times a day in this group is progress over perfection, right? Yeah. As long as the more time that you spend in this group, the more you realize it's not just the porn group, right? This is self-awareness boot camp. I like to call it self-awareness 101.
Great way to put it.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Through the various tools we use, you mentioned a few, and I definitely want to hear more of your experience with that. But the various tools that we use, all of them are in one way or another just a way to build that self-awareness muscle. Just something as simple as, say, the feelings exercise, right? Where am I at? Where have I felt this before? You're developing a sense of awareness of where you were and how it led you to where you are. We could go all day on like various tools, and I definitely want to hear about your experience, but let's start from the beginning. So great intro. Let's dive into detail. Yeah. So you said that how did you first find the program? So you said that you had gotten to a point where, hey, I might want to reach out. How did you finally find this program?
I think it was simply the algorithm rewarding me for. It was not even like it was some other influencer in some completely different industry that made a random post about it that I'd never seen before. And he made some links that say, hey, if you're not getting to where you are, if you keep butting up against this friction or whatever, maybe research the fact that you might be addicted to porn. And I'd seen stuff like that before, but it was like, I like this quote, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So wow. I started, whether I searched for it or I mentioned it or something, within a week, I think, and I'm trying to rack my brain, trying to think about how JK showed up in particular in Porn Reboot. It might have simply been like, hey, if this is of interest to you, I've got a free 7-step, the lead magnet, whatever. So I was like, all right, I'll check this out. Liked what I saw, and then moved on to the next step. But it was just, I think the Instagram algorithm, YouTube, whatever, just rewarding what was on the brain at the time. And JK and the team popped up. They were the first. They were the first to the plate, I would say, and I'm glad they were. So,
very cool. So you join the program, and then you are just starting to get acclimated with, okay, who is this JK person? Mm-hmm. What's a reboot hero? A lot of different tools kind of being thrown at you. Mm-hmm. What was it like when you first joined the group?
It was, obviously there's a lot, right? I like to say that you've got this fire hose getting blasted at you, and you got to pick what part of the fire hose to drink from first. And I've done lots of businesses where it's the same thing, right? You're like, it's a completely new environment. You're like, but if you just slow down, like everybody wants to get to the result yesterday. Most people do, right? Whether it's a fitness program or whatever it is, right? So it's, all right, all the other stuff, it almost behooves JK to be like, all right, you can't even unlock this other shit until you've done these things. Have you done your thank you letter? Have you at least just looked at the tools? Have you done your rubber band? Have you posted the basic stuff? The quick start. It is overwhelming because they're like, God, all these modules, and it's just like anything else. I used to tell clients all the time when I was a financial advisor, everybody's got their elephant. Doesn't matter what it is, what it looks like, how big it is. How do you eat it? One bite at a time. Do we start with the tail? Do we start with the foot, the ear, whatever? So that was the first thing. It looks big, but you just start to chip away at the things. Yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, no, I 100% know where you're coming from. It's a lot of information, but like you said, there's a reason why each upcoming module isn't available until a few days or a week apart at a time, meant to be taken your time with. Like you're like, the way I like to think of it, so you're not supposed to shove the whole pizza pie into your mouth in one full bite, it's one slice, one bite at a time. Choose your favorite metaphor. But it really like has you sit with one bit at a time. Yeah, it looks like a mountain, but the expectation is to Superman jump like all the way from the valley to the peak. There's one step at a time.
Yeah, you're not going to do it. It's the same thing and you're probably going to relate to this, but as a segue into, if anybody's ever worked out and you do sit-ups, one sit-up isn't going to do anything.
Right.
5 sit-ups isn't going to do anything. 20 sit-ups isn't going to do anything, right? There's a Muhammad Ali quote is, I never counted how many reps. I just went until it started to hurt, and then I kept going.
Right.
Early on, the feelings exercise, all that stuff, it doesn't start to feel like it's moving the needle. And I'd be lying if I said there wasn't some frustration, that there wasn't some affect around every time that I do it. But I'm still doing it. And whether you can connect the dots to how it's actually changing, it's all part of the whole deal. So just think of it like just one step at a time. Once you start stacking that stuff, it will start to have an effect.
Let me ask you about that. So you're over time, it's like, all right, you're going through the motions, you're learning about these various tools, and you're sticking with the system. And then you're finally starting to see dots connect. You're finally starting to see changes. I'm curious as to what some of those changes were for you.
Just temperament. I think one of the biggest reasons that I wanted to do this, apart from just being more efficient in business and wasting so much precious time that can eat up, especially when I was working from home a lot, it was like, it's all interrelated, right? So if I was spending too much time watching porn, knowing that I should be doing this other stuff. I'll get to it. By the time I would actually get to work and do all this stuff, I was really zapped for time. And then, oh shit, I got to go pick up the kids. My wife's going to be home soon. And then, so it really, and that led into temperament, right? So to answer your question, it was just being more mindful of, it's all interconnected, right? So if I'm watching less, that means that I can be more efficient and choose what I do with my time. If I'm more efficient with my time, that means the to-do list is tackled a little bit better. If the to-do list is tackled a little bit better, then I don't feel so stressed and put blame on the kids for chewing up all my time, even though I want to spend time with them. And then, the kids are in bed. I got to actually catch up on the work that I didn't do during the day, which means I'm cutting into quality time with my wife. So it's all interrelated. So I'm looking at it more pragmatically rather than like feeling. It was just like, all right, you really have to take control of this. So I wouldn't connect the actual dots. It was just, it's all part of the mixture of the things that you learn. So again, you don't necessarily get there. And it was probably it was a year ago, and it was probably towards the end of the year that I really started piecing that together as far as connecting the dots to, okay, all this stuff is coming together.
Yeah, like you said before, time is a priceless commodity. The time that you may have spent getting involved in unhealthy behaviors, suddenly you have more time to breathe and be with your family and take care of things that you actually want to take care of. So that's a huge win right there. So I applaud you for that, for real. Now, as far as the various things that led you to that sense of self-awareness, what were some of those tools that you learned about that proved to be really helpful for you?
I think self-awareness is a big key on it. Like, I will say the Dr. Eastman, I think, probably had some of the most impact apart from, so I wouldn't say it's tools so much, it's the accountability aspect of it, the brotherhood aspect of it, I don't think can be talked about enough.
Mm-hmm.
If you're thinking about getting into this program, the accountability partner and finding somebody that you really connect with is key. I'm still talking to both of my accountability partners. I'm out of the group. I just talked to him yesterday. We're both out of the group, but I'm still talking to him because we could still relate. We could still do that. So that's one key that, like, it's really easy as men in today's day and age to be on an island, to be isolated, right? And isolation is the number one trigger, I think, for me, certainly, but for a lot of us, I would agree. So the accountability piece was huge, and putting an emphasis on that. Dr. Eastman really helped with just giving some tools and insight. For me, anger management is, especially with kids, I'm a professional apologizer now, but the tools that she gave, very simple tools on being able to, but you can't just, that's a Band-Aid if you haven't done the work to get to a point where it's easier to use that sort of stuff. Again, it's just, I can't, other than those two things, I can't name a specific because it's all interconnected. Journaling is huge. Getting your stuff out pen to paper. And I've journaled before, but I like the structure of this. I'm still doing feelings. I do true and untrue, rational belief. I'm doing goals. I'm doing wins. So I actually incorporate some of the tools into my journaling rather than doing them on the sheets. But
Great.
The wins, the dialoguing from breaking the cycle are all part of my daily journal entries. So it's just good to get that stuff out of your head so it's not occupying space. So those are the things that personally have had the most effect for me.
I love that. And I completely relate to you. Like, I have been a part of this group since 2020, and my accountability partner, my two accountability partners that I, partnered up with in the beginning of my time here, I literally last night I was talking to one of them. So I'm right there in the same boat with you. He's moved on, he's doing his own thing, but like, we still keep in touch and keep each other accountable. Even if it's not stuff, like, still keep each other accountable on other things, right?
Totally.
So that's awesome that you still have that connection. That's really great.
Yeah.
So my question that I like to ask guys is basically, like you touched upon in the very beginning, how insidious that this type of world, this type of behavior can be. I'm curious, for a guy who might be watching this or listening to this, if they are maybe on the fence of joining a group like this, or even trying to join a group or implement a system to put an end to this type of behavior, who may be anxious, apathetic, despondent, struggling in silence the way that you and I know very well. I'm curious as to what you would say to a person like that.
I got it. And some people might not like hearing this, but you got to make a decision regardless of whether you think you're ready or not. And I got a great quote: you jump out of the airplane and build a parachute on the way down. You're never going to be 100% ready, because that thinking is going to tell you, like, all right, I have to be the guy that doesn't watch porn in order to get the group, which doesn't make any freaking sense. So you got to just get in, realize that you have to do the work, but the work will have an impact on you. So one is just making a decision, regardless of whether you're ready. The less ready you think you are, the better it is to actually make the decision to go. Just jump.
I love that.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, would you recommend this program to somebody who might be struggling?
Absolutely. It's intensive, but that's the point, right? Yeah. This isn't like a kumbaya 90-day thing. This is a legit rounded. And again, I want to touch on some of the other stuff. Like, there's a fitness aspect of this you can get involved in. There's a dating aspect of this. There's a finance component of all this. It's not just that. It's really just making sure that, and that's another thing I think we should touch on, is you have access to these other things that some of them I did, some of them I didn't, but the fact that they're there makes you understand that, hey, this is about creating a more well-rounded, and you can have the option to involve yourself in some of the other programs that are available. I think that's a key component of this as well. It's not just like a 90-day deal. And look, if you've been watching 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years like me, you're not going to just it's not just going to be erased in 90 days or 120. For some guys, it may be like, and that's amazing, right? But if you really think about the time that you've been doing this and the time it's going to take to undo that, this lays an amazing foundation for you to create a new chapter in your life.
Yeah, I love that you worded it that way. Like, it is a foundation setter. Like we said earlier, we have various ways to invest into what we call in the group reboot capital. So let's say, for example, you have your physical reboot with something like Optimum U. That's led by Coach Seamus. He's an absolute baller, knows his stuff inside and out. If you're making a conscious choice to work on your biochemistry, definitely give that a try. Your dating reboot, your financial reboot, and everything in between. It is, like we said, not just the group. We invest in this different kinds of reboot capital to the point where, whether it be or some other compulsive behavior, is just totally a non-factor and just irrelevant. You're so invested into all these other things that you don't even have time, or you put so much value and emphasis on what makes the temptation to act out just dissipates naturally.
That's a huge key. And I think that, at least for me, filled a void for lack of success or lack of perceived success in like businesses or career or whatever. I just jumped into a completely new business just a couple months ago, but there is a lot more clarity. There's a lot more drive. So again, when you wipe away some of the stuff that has been holding you back, it's a circle. It's a very positive circle that, like, hey, porn was preventing me from doing this. So I feel lack of fulfillment. So I'm just going to keep doing this, and so on and so forth. So you remove one of those elements. I don't even know if I'm making sense, but I was tying like porn to lack of purpose, which I think there's a lot to that. But I also think that porn was like filling the void for the lack of purpose, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And that's a huge realization. One thing that you learn in this group is that's the power of self-awareness. You not only become aware of like how something is unhealthy for you, but why you're doing what you're doing. And that's really powerful that you came to that realization, man. And I'm sure anybody who's watching or listening can relate to that lack of self-purpose or self-actualization. And that's why we dive into certain behaviors to fill that kind of hole or that void or that need. But we say, when you invest yourself fully into your essence, into what makes you, into what you truly want beyond just the physical need, man, it's a game changer. And this program, I'm speaking from a perspective of a guy who's been there. It is the best investment I've ever made, for sure.
Yeah.
So again, I respect your time and I appreciate you hopping on. Do you happen to have any final words for anybody who might be watching or listening?
Yeah, I just stepped out of a financial advisor role here after doing it for 4 years. The best investment, the highest return investment, is nothing that you can buy. It's not Bitcoin, it's not crypto, it's not real estate, none of that. It's investing in yourself, for real. And that's coming from somebody that's done it over and over. The best investment you can make is in yourself. It sounds cliche, but fight me. I don't care.
Alex, thank you so much for your time, man.
All right. Thanks, Chris.